We can get it going in five, four, three, two.
It's showtime, folks!
Well, how the hell are you? Now, I know what you're thinking. What is an all-pro Jaffo doing with a guy from the other side of the ball? This isn't a football show. Well, you're correct. It's not. So, what are we doing here? I'm glad you asked. Well, JP, friend of the program, and also friend of the A7FL, having a conversation, he just asked me one day, Dub, do you watch wrestling? And I said, I have since 1984. You're damn right. So then he told me that he once upon a time did a wrestling podcast and asked, he thought about starting up, do I want to be a part of it? So that took all of 2.5 seconds. You're damn right. Let's go. Let's do it. So here we are. It's rebranded. It's brand spanking new, but not new, but welcome for some and introducing others, the Ring Psychology Podcast 2.0. I am Double Anthony Alvarez, and that is my fellow friend and fellow member of the Friend Faithful, JP in the building, the bad guy.
Sure. Yo.
So, first off, JP, thank you for wanting to include me in this to talk about the business, and as my good friend Mills likes to say, the male soap opera that is professional wrestling. But before we get into this, and yes, we will be coming to you every Thursday, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 Eastern, which would be 9 Central, 8 Mountain, and if you're in Hawaii and Alaska, that would be 4 p.m. But before we continue with this, we ourselves, being big fans, we want to do our just due diligence, and we want to pay tribute to two legends that we lost a couple of weeks ago. Of course, the legendary Terry Funk at the age of 79, and the tragic loss at the age of 36 of Wyndham Rotunda, better known to us as Bray Wyatt. And as they do whenever the guy goes to the big, bright arena lights in the sky, we here at the Ring Psychology Podcast will like to give our 10-bell salute to the memory of Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt. Their contributions to the business will surely never be forgotten. Terry Funk, one of the most influential names, certainly over the last 40 years. Certainly in our lifetime, he's been very influential. Of course, from the Double Cross Ranch in Amarillo, Texas, went to West Texas State, played football, but of course, him being trained by his legendary father, Dory Funk Sr., of course, him and his brother, Dory Funk Sr., him and the Briscoes, the only sets of brothers to prestigiously hold the NWA World Heavyweight title. Of course, when you speak about the 10 pounds of gold back in the territory days, the NWA, as Tony Schiavone said for many years on World Championship Wrestling, was the major leagues of professional wrestling. And if you were the NWA World Champion, you were held in high prestige. You were held in high regard. You were the guy that would travel into everybody's territory and do the 1 hour dance as opposed to the 60-minute time limit, which is why Ric Flair was given the nickname the 60-minute man, because you are the guy. You're going to every territory in Florida, Minneapolis, Chicago, in the West Coast in Vegas, the Cow Palace in San Francisco, up in Portland, all these different territories that the NWA had before, of course, things broke out. And eventually Jim Crockett Promotions branched out to what eventually became WCW, so on and so forth. But Terry Funk, his legendary rivalries with the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, is the stuff of legend. Of course, his memorable 1989 feud with Ric Flair. Um, after Flair gets done with the trilogy with Steamboat, and I'm telling you, if you have not seen the trilogy between Flair and Steamboat of 1989, you need to do yourself a favor. Watch Chi-Town Rumble, watch Clash of Champions 6 Raging Cajun, and watch Wrestle War 89. You want to talk about telling a story and talking about poetry in the ring, that's Flair and Steamboat, which goes to show you just how great Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is, because Steamboat could adjust to any style and could make anybody look presentable, which is, what you want to do. Which interview that Steamboat said, at first he adjusted to their style, and then eventually they adjusted to his style, which, went to the back and forth. Of course, we can talk about the match between him and Savage at WrestleMania 3. Still, in my opinion, to this day, the greatest match in WrestleMania history. It'll forever be my number one. But
That's
Terry Funk and Flair at the Great American Bash in '89, which led to Sting and Flair becoming a tag team, and then Funk going with Muta. Halloween Havoc, the first Thunderdome cage match, and then concluding with the I Quit match at Clash of Champions 9 in Troy, New York. Then Terry Funk venturing off and giving ECW credibility by being their World Heavyweight Champion, taking a young Tommy Dreamer under his wing and making Tommy Dreamer the innovator of violence. Very influential in that locker room, of course. The many wars him and Mick Foley had in the Japanese death matches. I mean,
you talk about legendary. That
yeah.
like that was those matches right there was actually how I really got introduced to Terry Funk, because I had seen him on ECW, but knowing who I am, I'd like to see more of somebody's past. Especially if I don't know him, I like to dig in a little bit to who it is that I'm watching. And the death matches between him and Mick, because I remember seeing it, because at that time, what I saw on TV is what I thought there was.
Yeah.
That I didn't know about the indies. I didn't know about ROH or anything. I didn't know about New Japan or All Japan or anything back then. The long, Antonio Inoki and everything. I didn't know anything about that during that time. Remember, I was born in '91, so obviously that was a little bit, before my time. But still going back and seeing those, it's like, oh, so these two are the guys that basically turned hardcore into a thing. Without these two, hardcore does not happen.
Yeah, they transcended along with Paul Heyman and brought the revolution that was ECW, because when ECW started, it was just known as Eastern Championship Wrestling. And then, of course, the late Superfly Jimmy Snuka was its first world champion. Then Todd Gordon brought in Paulie Dangerously after Paulie Dangerously got fired from WCW. And then Paulie, one of the most brilliant minds still going today. One of the best talkers going, one of the best mouths, one of the best minds, of course. Him learning from one of my all-time favorites, the American Dream does the rolls, the baby gonna get funky like a monkey, if you will, in public. Learn from him.
I miss that guy.
Well, you want to talk about shedding tears. I had legit shedded tears when Dusty and Macho Man Randy Savage passed away. My very first wrestling T-shirt was of Randy Mario Poffo, known as the Macho Man. But just to people, you said, you didn't see explosives in a match. You didn't see bed of nails. You didn't see thumbtacks. You didn't see barbed wire as ropes.
I was used to seeing like Doink the Clown and shit running around. Like that's what I was used to. Like before the Attitude Era and all that kind of stuff, like really sunk in the late '90s. It was. They call it even now. It was cartoony.
It was.
But as a kid watching it, it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, cartoony. That's fun. But then as you get older and you still continue to watch it and see it, you would hope for some sort of evolution. It wouldn't stay cartoony forever.
No. And Vince tried, but here's the thing. Now, obviously, I was born in '82, so when I started, it was right at the right at the apex of Hulkamania,
Yeah.
rock and wrestling, the golden age, as some would call it. And then, of course, WCW branching off from Jim Crockett Promotions and becoming, in a sense, the second fiddle. But, of course, you had Flair, Sting, Luger, the Great Muta, the Freebirds, the Steiner Brothers, the Road Warriors before they went to, at that time, the WWF. And then, of course, the year you were born, the dispute between Flair and Jim Herd, and Flair literally takes the big gold belt that at that time, if you left, you had to give back the golden belt. And Flair was like, screw you, I'm not doing it. And, of course, that led to the whole video demonstration of the belt when Flair went to, at that time, WWF programming. And then, of course, when Luger finally wins the title, you see that they had to put a little thing over the belt because it was one of Dusty's 3-man tag belts. That had to be the fake world title because they didn't have the eventual world title that Luger, Ron Simmons, Vader, and Sting and Flair wore from 91 to 93. It wasn't ready yet because the controversy of Flair leaving when he was supposed to put over Luger, but of course Flair didn't want to put Luger over. And of course, that's why they say the 1991 Great American Bash is one of the worst pay-per-views of all time. But then of course the Chainsaw Charlie character helping Cactus Jack, of course, them and the Outlaws giving us that dumpster match at WrestleMania 14. And then he tags with Scorpio, and then Terry Funk just kind of wanders off. But he is
an underrated piece in the Foley Undertaker Hell in a Cell match.
Well,
because watching Terry Funk in that match added so much more. I feel like if you were in the crowd or you were watching it on TV, Terry Funk was a representation of all of us. We all wanted to know, is Mick Foley dead?
Well,
Please
I mean,
stop, Undertaker.
Like, of course, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler giving us some of the greatest sound bites you will ever hear in a pay-per-view. As God is my witness, he's broken in half. And then, of course, that's it, he's dead. Will somebody stop the damn match? Enough's enough. And then, of course, Jim Ross comes in and Terry gets a choke slam for Rose, and Terry Funk literally gets choke slammed out of his shoes. And then, of course, a lot of people thought Cactus or Mick was smiling. He wasn't smiling. He had a tooth up his nose. So it may look like he's smiling, but of course, given that this is an illusion, the whole Jim Ross soundbite, how in the hell is he standing? Yeah. And he's smiling. I mean, just
and
it was
Terry
the representation
walking Foley out and, kind of getting everybody like, dude, you guys need to recognize what the fuck just happened right now. Give this man a round of applause. Well, this was something like insane, and it changed the game. It really did.
Like
that's why I say, like, Terry Funk was an emotional, underrated piece in that entire match.
Well, like I said, he is up there as far as being influential. He's up there with Hogan. He's up there with Andre. He's up there with Flair, Dusty, Macho, Piper, Austin, Rock, Undertaker. He is one of the most.
He's in that hall in Valhalla for sure.
He is one of the most important names in the business for the last 40 years. There's no denying that because his contributions and what he sacrificed and what he did for this business is certainly done. Then switching to Bray Wyatt, which is as tragic as it can be. 36 years old, too damn young. Still had so much to give.
That one was so tough for me, and I kind of wanted to. I knew we were going to get into this because I wanted to actually kind of say it because it's actually taken me a little bit to kind of process it and really understand what had really happened. Because I've been watching wrestling for a long time.
As have I.
Very, very few and far between do you have wrestlers that kind of resonate outside of the ring. That the actions and stuff they do in their real life, and what they do in the ring and just how he was because when you see it, they say in wrestling, what you see on TV is somebody's personality
Correct.
amped up to 10.
Correct.
So when we first get really introduced to him as Husky Harris, when NXT, with
The
the
Nexus.
Nexus
The
before,
Nexus. Yes.
NXT became a thing. And he kind of, after that, disappeared for a while, then reemerged, went through, FCW and just reemerged as this cult leader like character that was like, it was Undertaker-esque in how it would, like, gave that aura of, this is freaky. Like, and the way he would deliver it, the way he would, like, you just kind of, you really did feel like it was him. Like, the way he played into the whole um shock and awe of the character, and didn't just keep it that way. There were multiple versions, and to be fair, every character that I have ever seen has multiple versions of itself. Not one character really stays the same throughout the entire career. I mean, some people can make the argument of John Cena, but no, there's like 6 different characters of John Cena. 6 different variations of who he was as he got bigger and, grew and
Maybe
everything else like that.
maybe the only person that has stayed the same maybe is Ric Flair. He might be he might be the only one to really play the same guy to agree. I mean, there's he's upped it, of course, but as far as being the kiss stealing, willy nilly, jet flying son of a gun, he has still always portrayed that, and of course he has lived it. If you haven't watched the 30 for 30 about one Richard Morgan Flair, you need to watch that because there is only one person that can outdrink Ric Flair, and his name was Andre the Giant.
And then Bray, it's because he was like super young. He had his mistakes earlier on in his career. Obviously, everybody knows about, what happened. We don't need to go into detail or anything else like that because it's irrelevant at this point, because all of that, turmoil turned into, a family guy who, was doing everything for his kids, and then the characters and just everything that kind of went into it. And then you find out that he's going through some issues. And whenever I hear that, it kind of gets to me because I'm like, man, I've seen and known so many people. And then you hear about, celebrities, athletes, and all at the upper echelon and stuff. You think, like, it always made me think, especially growing up, how could somebody with so much fame and love from everybody and fortune and good, like, how could somebody like that be so sad and depressed and getting into, but as you grow older, you kind of learn how psychology works and how things go down, and you come to realize there's a lot of pressure when it comes to, you know, being behind the camera, especially at that capacity when billions of dollars are being put into, what you're doing, and there's people who not, just you work for, but people who depend on you to be there, not just family members, but like crew and everything. And like everybody gets a paycheck from what's being put on film.
Yeah.
The people behind the camera, like they all depend on, and this even goes, to actors, just it's all dependent on that. So there is a lot of pressure that comes to it. And then we see it on social media. It's been that way with paparazzi and stuff like that since the very beginning. Just people all up in your fucking business who don't need to be in your business, talking all the shit in the world when they know nothing about their own situations. So, and then he goes away for a little bit, and then you start hearing things, and I'm just going like, just don't, just please, just please do not be another statistic. And then he came back and he gave that true promo come like as him
as
and saying
as
like this is
as
me.
that wasn't Bray Wyatt. That was Wyndham Lawrence Rotunda that you got.
And you see that, and he's hard on his sleeve, pouring it out to everybody. You can feel it through the TV. And for me, I watched that going like, I was like, I'm glad he's here.
Which really makes me wish I was a fly on the ring rope, because I really would love to know what Mark Calloway whispered in his ear on the Raw 30th anniversary special.
It was enough to one choke him up.
Yeah,
You could tell it broke
yeah,
him for a second.
you can visibly see it. Yes,
And you see like all the work that he put in, winning the Universal Championship, the WWE Championship. Like, what he thought in the very beginning that we would be talking about Bray Wyatt being a world champion. And he did it because he got himself over. He worked his ass off. He had a hell of a faction behind him. We Brody Lee, with him too, like Brody Lee, like that, and then bringing in Braun Strowman, and it's just, and then with Eric Rowan with him, and
but
it's just how he kind
here's
of
what people
elevated people.
Yeah, but here's what people forget. Bray comes from a tremendous pedigree.
Yeah.
Of course, we're talking about Blackjack Mulligan,
Yeah.
one of the original Blackjacks, his grandfather. Trained by his uncles, the late Kendall Windham, and of course, Barry Windham. And I still think to this day, Barry Windham does not get enough respect for being one of the best versatile, athletic big men in the industry. I still think he gets not enough respect, and I still think he's underrated. And then, of course, his dad, Mike Rotunda. You want to talk about just fundamentally sound? Mike Rotunda, of course, better known than many others as IRS or BK Wall Street or Michael Wall Street. But I mean, Mike Rotunda, in my opinion, and this is just my 2 cents, but Mike Rotunda and Arn Anderson, you can say they are 1 and 1A when it comes to the greatest NWA WCW TV champions of all time. Mike Rotunda was a multiple-time TV champion in WCW. Of course, won the tag team titles with Ted DiBiase as Money Incorporated. Mike's one of the smartest guys in there. You got that. Of course, his brother, Bo Dallas, who was, of course, the Uncle Howdy character. So Bray came from a fantastic pedigree, came from a fantastic wrestling family. So you knew it was in his blood. But going back to the old mental stuff that you were talking about, and this really takes me back to when Eddie Guerrero passed away back in 2005, and how Chris Benoit was never the same. And of course, we all know what happened shortly after that. We don't need to, pick that branch. But yeah. I think when Brody Lee passed away so suddenly, and then you saw Bray's tribute that he put on his Instagram page, and it had you in your feels, it put tears in your eyes, because that was legit, that was real, that was heartfelt. And funny thing about it is, Brody Lee and Dolph Ziggler actually came to my job and ate. Now, of course, the fanboy in me wanted to go say hi, I'm a big fan, E-I-E-I-O, but, I understand the other day, yes, they play a character on TV, but they are still human beings, and sometimes they just want to be left alone. And I think fans that are fans of wrestling need to understand that. It's like, yeah, there's a time and a place to talk and ask for autographs, but, I mean, if you're seeing them in a restaurant by themselves, you can peek, but just leave them alone. Don't bother them, because, they're humans too, and they go through stuff in life too. And not to mention when Randy Orton got with the Wyatt family, and you add that dynamic.
And then when Daniel Bryan, now known as Bryan Danielson, was in with the group, that whole feud with everything, and then him, in a way, kind of evolving and elevating Alexa Bliss.
Yes.
When he's
the Fiend character, and the Firefly House and all that stuff. And then, of course, the cinematic match he did with John Cena at WrestleMania 36 6, I believe.
The creativity
Yes.
in a
Yes.
lot of what he did, because again, what was so awe-inspiring, especially about somebody like The Undertaker,
Mm-hmm.
was that it was kind of one of the last like extraordinary, unrealistic, but holy crap type of characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously he's not dead.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he's not really, making lightning and doing all of like obviously that there's effects and stuff like that behind it. But there's still, when you play the character correctly, and real fans know when they walk in there, you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to go into a wrestling show with a sort of sense of, like lose reality for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You got to come into it and just kind of really lose your sense of what's real and what isn't. You just got to kind of go with it and enjoy the show.
This is where your kayfabe comes in.
Yeah, just enjoy it, because again, when everybody kind of buys into the kayfabe,
Mm-hmm.
the shows are so fun.
Yes.
That's when you see these big crowds, the big pops, all of that kind of stuff go into place. That's because of that type of atmosphere. Everybody, and it's crazy because I never really knew that this kind of stuff happened. I thought people just kind of showed up and it was there, but it's almost like a concerted effort. Like everybody pre-show
Mm-hmm.
on the outside getting it is talking, hey, we basically a game plan for the show,
Mm-hmm.
how
Yeah.
we're going to help the show.
Game plan and
So it's like, hold on.
And the finish.
It's like the fans are literally discussing how they're going to be part of the show if it goes down a certain way. And that kind of made me fall in love with wrestling just even more, because you kind of knew, all right, everybody's here having fun. Everybody's, the suspended, belief. And it's just one of those things you can just enjoy a show. Adults can be kids. Kids can enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a cool atmosphere.
For those 2-3 hours, it takes you away from the worries of the world, takes you away about what bills you might have to pay when you get back home, or issues with your spouse or your kids not acting right. I mean, for those 3 hours, you're free because you are vicariously living through the character that you paid your hard-earned money to go watch perform and to tell a story. And Bray Wyatt was one of the best storytellers, certainly in this era, in this generation, that we had. I had the privilege of seeing Bray once at Elimination Chamber back in 2018 against Matt Hardy when Matt was in his Woken character. And that was the end of that program. The only thing I was mad about was Bray didn't come out to his theme song, and I was pumped. I was ready. I was ready to put my camera light on the flash on my phone and hear the boom 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 boom. I was geeked and ready for it. Didn't happen. I'm like, damn it, Bray, why? But it was fun to see. It was fun to see.
I saw the show when he came back at No Mercy when they came to Sacramento.
Which makes me regret more that I did not get to WrestleMania 31 at Gene Stadium in Santa Clara at Great America. Makes me even more of the mat now that I didn't get to go.
I mean, I kind of looked at it this way because there was a thought process of me having to go to that WrestleMania, and looking at the card, it was kind of like, all right, this is gonna be a good one. I was actually very interested in the Bray Wyatt, Undertaker, very interested in that.
And of course, me being a Sting guy, I wanted to go see Sting under the WWE banner, which
unfortunately I kind of knew he was going to lose for that exact reason.
Yeah. I mean, Vince will do anything he can.
There was hope, but
try and stick it to WCW. But I mean, Sting is still thriving at the age of 64 in AEW.
I don't know how he does it.
I mean,
How he does it.
I guess Darby makes him feel young, but I mean, it's reading about Bray. I mean, it instantly takes you back to when Eddie Guerrero passed away, still being active. Takes you back, obviously, to the tragedy that was Owen Hart in '99. Because you don't think about wrestlers passing away when they're active. I mean, like Louis Piccoli was active. One of my all-time favorites, and it really broke my heart when Kerry Von Erich, took his life. You just, and of course, the rest of the Von Erich family minus Kevin. Many people don't know when David passed away. David was supposed to be the next NWA World Champion, but he goes to Japan and passes away, and that's why they let Kerry, in a sense, hold the title for a week to honor David. So it really hits you. It really hits you home when an active wrestler passes away, especially at the age of 36.
What hit for me was more of the fact that I watched him come back from a dark place.
Correct.
And for his life to be taken in the fashion that it did, of cardiac arrest, I was like, what kind of sick joke is this? Like, this is not like when I found out, my cousin, he sent me a video, and then I was like, no way, there's got to be some sort of work or some shit. Like, no, like, and then you read more into it and you see it and you see the reasoning. And I literally was sitting there going, this was the guy who had visions of doing it to himself, got out of that place, has his family, starting to live happy, getting back to doing what he loves to do in professional wrestling, just to be cruelly taken away the way it was. And the tributes that they did to him, I couldn't watch them at first. Like, it took me a few days to watch them, because I knew they were going to be heavy. And when I saw them, like, I really did cry. Like, when I watched them for the first time, about a week after they had already aired. It took a while for me to actually watch it, because then when you see it, it's that whole culmination of everything, just of what we were seeing.
When you have the crowd basically sing a gospel song, because for people that don't know, he's got the whole world in his hands. That's actually a gospel song in reference to Jesus Christ. Of course, which was part of Bray Wyatt's shtick when he was, the eater of all worlds. But when you have the crowd singing that,
with the fireflies in the air,
with the fireflies in the air, and then appropriately, you got the chair down the aisle, you have the light in the ring, and then the camera's just there on Braun Strowman and Eric Rowan. That is some very powerful stuff. And I mean, they couldn't have done a better tribute. Lord knows I can do a better one to put that together the way they did.
And the way the show kind of went at, like, each wrestler and stuff was kind of giving their own tribute in their own way. When LA Knight came out and talked about, he said it himself, I'm not going to sit here and act like we were friends or like that we were close or anything like that. But he told a real story about his relationship with Bray. And at the end of the story, it was kind of like that, oh man, well, it all ended up working out, but then we didn't get a chance to kind of see where it could have gone.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Because there was more to tell with the LA Knight Bray Wyatt story. There was.
Especially now with LA Knight in his rise and how big and over he's got. Can you imagine LA Knight and Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania? at this point in time right now, like at WrestleMania 40,
in,
as big and as over as both of them were.
in Philadelphia, and we all know how Philadelphia crowds get very passionate at sporting events. As Gorilla Monsoon would always say, you can cut the electricity with a knife. That definitely could have been a very good storytelling. But I mean, 36 years old, just too doggone young to die. It's just mind-boggling. But now we are going to switch from one federation and talk about another. But before we get into that controversial subject, we do want to go back and read the events from All Out that took place at Wembley Stadium, going over the results.
All out or all in?
All Out, then All In, because I mean 2 pay-per-views have passed for AEW, so we're just gonna go with the events. So
I was gonna say, because I'm not gonna lie, when it came to All In, I was just that, all in. It was when it came to All Out. I guess I was kind of all out.
I was like, really, you're gonna do another pay-per-view 1 week after you just got 81,035 crowd in Wembley, and I mean the crowd was outstanding. It was electric. I mean the set was phenomenal. I mean you got Mercedes Moné in the crowd up there, but here's the result.
What decision was that?
For her to be there?
No, probably not for her to be there. For the pay-per-views to be that close to each other.
I'm pretty sure that was Tony Khan's idea. It wouldn't put it past me if it was Tony Khan's idea. So, Adam Cole and MJF beat Aussie Open to win the ROH Tag Team titles. Hook defeats Jack Perry with the Kata Hajime to regain the FTW Championship. Yes, it's
Jack
called the
Perry.
It's Dylan McKay's son, but that's another story for another day.
The glass is real, huh?
Unfortunately, we are going to be talking about this person, but the program that he and Samoa Joe put together breaks my heart that it's coming to an end again because of stupidity. But he did defeat Samoa Joe for the Real World Championship. Bullet Club Gold beats the Golden Elite in another classic 6-man tag with those 6 men. Best tag team in the world. It's hard to argue that point. FTR, Cash and Dax beat the Young Bucks in another spectacular finale with those 2. The Stadium Stampede match, the Best Friends, Penta, Eddie Kingston, and my guy, Freshly Squeezed. I am a huge Orange Cassidy fan. That's my guy. They beat the Blackpool Combat Club in the Stadium Stampede match. Saraya in her home country wins the AEW Women's Championship. Darby and Sting beats Swerve and Christian in the Coffin match. Will Ospreay is a star in the making. He just continues to just put together spectacular matches. Him and Jericho and Offspring gets the win. The Acclaim and Billy Gunn beat the House of Black to win the 6-man tag team titles. And MJF stays the world champion by beating Adam Cole by pinfall. Like I said, one of the best pay-per-views in a while. It was pretty good. The story between MJF and Adam Cole is going to continue. But now, does Tony Khan really want to press the issue by having MJF have a program with Samoa Joe?
You know what? I don't think it's necessarily pressing the issue because one, you take Punk out of the whole thing, that whole situation.
Correct.
And we're talking about just, rivalries that people would want to see. When you put Samoa Joe and MJF on paper, and you look at that going, I would look at this going, oh, this is going to be gold. Why? Because Samoa Joe, for those of you who've been living under a rock and don't really understand and realize, Samoa Joe is one of the best talkers in the business. And it's not even close in some degree.
Joe's gonna kill you. Joe's gonna kill you.
he is a whole hell of a lot more than just the powerhouse that that you and an athletic powerhouse at that, that you see in the ring. But the way he articulates and the way he lays it down, the way he talks, Samoa Joe is one, and MJF said it. He's like, let's face it, a wrestling legend. Yeah, Samoa Joe is. Look at his resume. It goes back a long time. And I remember Samoa Joe back in the TNA days. I
Yes.
loved Samoa Joe back
Yes.
in the TNA days.
The submission.
Him and AJ Styles.
The Samoan submission machine. The wars he
It
had
was-
with AJ. The wars he had with Sting. The wars he had with Kurt Angle. I mean, him and AJ Styles, without question, are the pillars of TNA Impact Wrestling. You cannot mention that company without mentioning Joe and AJ. They are the two pillars. I mean, say what you want to say about the old guys. I mean, you can throw in Jay Lethal in that. You can throw in Sanjay Dutt in that. You can throw Abyss in that. But I mean, when I think of Impact and I think of the pillars of it, it's AJ Styles and it's Samoa Joe. It's those two.
Those battles. Well, him and with Chris, the battles that they used to have with not just them, but with Christopher Daniels for the X Division title and everything, like those were also, really. I didn't even realize how old Christopher Daniels actually was at that time.
Yeah,
I know he wasn't young, but he definitely wasn't like. I was like, wow. But when I look at Samoa Joe and I look at MJF, these are two guys that, promo wise, my God, like we're looking at this past week was just a small sample size of what people are going to. This is what should have main evented All Out, but a month and a half from now, or 2 months from now, not a week or 2 weeks later.
Well, the next pay-per-view is coming October the 1st in Seattle. And I think it's paying homage to Antonio Inoki. It's called Wrestle Dream. That's the next pay-per-view that's coming in October, and it's so it's taking place.
So now they're adding another. Is this just like a one-off thing, or is this like we're going to keep this as a pay-per-view?
That I don't know, but the reason why they're having this event is to honor the legendary founder of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Antonio Inoki, taking place exactly to the day of his passing, which he passed away last year. Of course, if you don't know who Antonio Inoki is, Japan wrestling legend. He is the reason.
Hold on, Deb. Hold on, Deb. People, I'm sorry. Look, if you don't know who Antonio Inoki is at this point, if you are literally, if you are 30 and up and you don't know who Antonio Inoki is yet, I hate to tell you this, but you're extremely behind the ball. You need to get on YouTube, go get an encyclopedia somewhere, and start doing your goddamn research and do it fast and get caught up, because you are way too far behind for us to explain the absolute contribution, and probably, if you're talking about the overall picture of professional wrestling as a whole, Mount Rushmore, not talking about WWE or AEW. We're talking about as a whole throughout history: WWE, AEW, WCW, New Japan, All Japan, everything all together as a whole. In the Mount Rushmore, you cannot talk about professional wrestling and not mention the name Antonio. That's it. Like that. That's all you people need to know on the history lesson. From here on out, go fucking figure it out, because this guy, there's a reason why New Japan is where it's at. There's a reason why Japanese wrestling is where it's at. And to be honest, it's kind of miles ahead of everything that anyone is doing, because everything that they do ends up on the big shows shortly afterwards because they do things and train the way that nobody else does. It's not necessarily taken lightly, to put it lightly. This shit's taken seriously as if you're either going to war. This is a little bit more than a sport. This is as close to MMA as you can get without killing somebody to that type of thing. It's just the way the discipline that goes into this whole thing. You wonder why you can't necessarily say you've done it all without going to Japan.
Here's all you need to know about Antonio Inoki. Him and Ric Flair, for 2 days, headlined an event in North Korea. Not South Korea.
You heard that right, folks. Oh.
North Korea, where there's a lot of foul stuff that's going on in North Korea. We don't need to explain what's going on there. But Inoki and Ric Flair in North Korea for 2 days drew 165,000 people. Day one. Day two, at Mayday Stadium, 190,000 fans.
Uh-huh.
So, let me paint the picture for you, folks.
Antonio Inoki was so big that North Korea couldn't cover him up.
That's 355,000 people that came to see Antonio Inoki and Ric Flair battle in the ring over a 2-day peace event in North Korea. Not South Korea, where they have the 88 Olympic Games. North Korea. North Korea. And yes, Antonio Inoki cannot hide in Japan. Okay? The war, and many people want to give flack to Hulk Hogan because Hulk couldn't wrestle or do this. He didn't have to in the United States. But
you did in Japan.
You want to see Terry Jean Balea do some mat wrestling? Go watch his matches against Tenryu. Tenryu is one of the greatest wrestlers you never heard of. Do your homework on Tenryu. Kenji Muto.
If Hulk Hogan would have done half the shit that he did in Japan in the WWE, they would have got richer a whole hell of a lot sooner.
Well, not only that, think about this. If Vince would have let Hogan use Axie Boomba as his finisher, or the Axie Bomber, which was his version of the lariat, because that was his finisher in Japan, not the atomic leg drop, for lack of a better term. But if he would have let him use, the Axie Bomber, he probably would have not had all those back surgeries that he had because before the back
falling on his ass. Oh.
Because of the back surgeries, Hogan really was 6'7", 6'8". Those back surgeries have now put him pretty much he's almost 6'3", 6'4" because of the back surgeries.
Fuck.
So you can definitely tell that he's lost some mind because of the back surgery. But Inoki, Tenryu, Riki Choshu, the wars that he and Tatsumi Fujinami had. I mean, it just, and I mean, kudos. One thing about Tony Khan, whether people like him or dislike him, the one thing I can appreciate about Tony Khan is he does not forget to appreciate the legends that came before him. He is very steadfast in making sure he honors those legends and gives them great perspective. It's pretty cool.
As he should, to be honest.
I agree, but I mean, it's pretty cool that this pay-per-view is going to honor the great memory of Antonio Inoki. Of course, like I said, he is a tremendous pillar in Japan, was in the Senate House of Japan. I mean, and as you would expect, him being Japanese, of course, Inoki was a tremendous gentleman, a tremendous gracious man. And again, you can't tell the story without talking about Antonio Inoki. But one fun story: Hogan did knock out Inoki with his Axie Palmer lariat back in the '80s, and that is on YouTube somewhere. Just research it. I'll just
You'll find it, people. It's there somewhere.
it's there somewhere. So
Technology has gone far enough. We can find it.
So here comes the sore subject that is Phillip Brooks, better known to everybody else as CM Punk, who once again seems to can't shut his mouth and once again is out of AEW, but this time he was fired as opposed to being put on a long vacation. The first time after he won the title, he got into it with the Young Bucks, got into it with Kenny Omega, got into it with Hangman and Page, led to a fist fight, and that's why you didn't see the Elite on TV for a long time, so everybody got suspended. Eventually, the Elite came back. They all resigned, so on and so forth. Then,
I keep seeing the meme now where it says being a kid is, enjoying CM Punk in his heyday. Being an adult is realizing that Triple H during that promo was 100% correct about him. It's a fucking shame because when he did come back, I do remember myself and the really good friend of mine, former co-host of the Ring Psychology podcast 1.0 when that was going on. Him and I, when we talked a bit, big fan of CM Punk, and we appreciated his work and everything else like that. How he went out was kind of it's a little up for debate on what happened, but then he gets into AEW, and then it's like, all right, cool. Like now he's back. One of the biggest pops I've heard. One of the most anticipated returns in professional wrestling in as far as I can remember.
Well, it almost reminded me when Triple H came back from his quad at Madison Square Garden in 2002, which started his run to win the world title at WrestleMania 18.
I feel like for that, the only difference is the fact that nobody ever thought Punk was coming back to professional wrestling.
When he was let go the first time, after the backstage chaos with the Elite and whatnot, which led to a physical confrontation because they were talking about Colt Cabana for whatever reason. You thought, okay, well, you know what? It didn't last that long. Okay. He's never probably going to come back. Then all of a sudden, AEW puts out a third show, Collision, or basically you could just call it the CM Punk Hour because that's pretty much basically what it was. I mean, he was basically exclusively featured on that show on Collision. And again, they're in Chicago. So again, huge pop. Again, doing his thing on the mic. And then again, backstage confrontation with Jungle Boy Jack Perry. And you're just like, what now?
See this whole, and then it got to the point even Tony Khan comes out, so I was afraid for my life. Like, hold on. What the fuck did he do? And think about this for a second. This all happened before his match with Samoa Joe.
Now that I did not know.
When he came out, it was just after the conference. It was literally immediately after the match between
Hook and
Jungle Boy.
Oh wow! Or now Hollywood.
And just before he had gone out to face Joe, the whole thing had gone on already by the time he had come out.
So they were in Gorilla.
Jack Perry has already been escorted out of the building by the time CM Punk comes out for the match. And then after the match, basically Punk is being supervised by security while he's getting ready and stuff like that. And once he got done getting dressed and whatnot, he was escorted out of the building. So and then Khan to come out and say he was afraid for his life. This was the first time at a wrestling event that I was actually afraid for my life type of stuff. It's like, what the hell actually happened during that whole confrontation?
Yeah.
And on top of that, there was no audible. It was kind of like the Real World Championship, which obviously at this point is not, because that's on MJF's waist. So maybe they just thought, let him win this match, get the hell out of here. Or why I feel like they should have audibled it, let Joe win the match, take the Real World Championship, toss that shit in the dump.
Yeah, because
and walk out with the ROH World Championship, and then heading into his fight with MJF.
Because technically, when he was suspended the first time, he currently was the AEW champion, which he technically never lost the belt. But because you can't have your world champion off for a significant amount of time, they had to have a tournament, which Jon Moxley won, and then Moxley drops the belt to MJF, and MJF has been your champion ever since. So, my thing was, okay, so now you have that dynamic. Were they going to retell the story between Punk and MJF and have them battle for both belts? Or would you continue the Adam Cole and MJF story, which is gain traction? Even though I really hope they don't make MJF a face, keep him as a heel.
Well, they kind of have.
Yes, they're tweening him, but it's just like, don't tween him. Don't do that, because
it's working though, isn't it?
It is, yes, and of course, anybody's job in the ring is to generate heat. Any kind of way you do it, be it as a heel, be it as a face, your main job is to generate heat. And yes, MJF can generate heat both ways, but it's just he's just so better as a heel. You have to agree with that.
Yeah, no, I actually told you when he first showed up on AEW, that was like kind of the first I was really starting to hear real big things about him. And then again, doing the deep dive and the digging and everything that I do, I looked at him and I was going like, as a whole, fuck, like this guy's the best heel in the business. Like there's nobody close. Like especially the way he's taught. Like this reminds me of like a version of when Edge was at the top of his heel moments, just giving you all the truth, and you couldn't do shit about it because you knew it was the truth, and you were just sitting there pissed at him the whole time. And just the way he is on the mic, the way he is kind of what you would call a safe wrestler in his style. He doesn't do too many flashy things. Right now he's doing a few comedic things. I'm sorry, but that double arm clothesline as the finisher is the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. As soon as I saw that, I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, they call it out, and I'm like, that's literally their finisher. A double arm clothesline is I was like, okay, this is insane. I was like, this really is getting over.
Yeah, it is.
And then, but again, he can tap into that comedic side.
Yes.
But he can, and then you see with the promos that he just did with Joe, that he can get into the, real, you can get kind of personal, almost shoot promo-ish with Joe, mm-hmm. and have them go back and forth and, be able to enjoy that. So he's got range. And again, I really do think he's a good tweener. I do agree. I don't think straight face is the way to go. He should always stay either a tweener or a true heel. I would prefer him as a true heel because I think he's just better as a true heel.
Yes.
He's just really, really.
Because you want to talk about generating heat. Him as
Oh, nobody can do it like him.
generates legit heat like none other.
And what's crazy is, and this is why I think about it going like, if he did end up going to the WWE, I mean, sure, that's going to line his pockets something fierce. They're going to pay big, big money for him. But how much of the shit that he does is going to be able to get done on the WWE?
How much free range is he going to get if he goes to Connecticut? That's the ultimate question, because he has as much free reign as he has right now. But I mean, I kind of understand what Eric Bischoff means when he says, "Don't give everybody creative control," because that will lead to a shit show.
That's what he did, so he knows better than anybody.
He would know, and I mean, but I think in Tony's case, I think he's trying to take on too much, which I think he needs to. I mean, that's why you have guys that are like Jerry Lynn and Arn Anderson, and of course Tony Schiavone being his right-hand man as far as the producer side goes.
They just fired Ace Steel, so.
Well, there you go. But I think sometimes Tony needs to put his placement with the right people to trust, and not just try to trust everybody, because they will stab you as quick as they can throw you.
I was going to say, Tony, you really need to understand if this somehow gets to you somehow, some way. Just letting you know. I don't know if you knew what you were getting yourself into when you decided to get into the pro wrestling business and help fund, AEW and make this become a thing. And maybe you thought, my dad deals with it with the Jaguars and stuff like that, so I know how to deal with, a locker room full of egos. This is an entirely different type of ego that you're not prepared for. So you need to have people who have gone through it, who know how to talk to these guys.
Even Vince McMahon has Patterson and Bruce Pritchard. You need to find your Pat Patterson and your Bruce Pritchard, Tony. I'm telling you, you'll be better off having one of those guys.
Sting at some point is going to need to be one of those guys once he's done doing this.
And he
should be doing it now, but still.
Well, there is, and speaking of Steve Borden, my guy, I think he is slowly coming into that role, because there are talks of him becoming one of those guys with Tony when he eventually decides to stop being a in-ring performer.
When he's 85, that's when he's going to die.
Okay.
He's going to go in a coffin match, and he's going to be like, I'm the Sting, and I'm just going to die in the ring. I don't ever see him quitting, because if he's doing this at 65, I'm like, if he's still moving like this, still trying crazy shit that no 65-year-old man should be doing.
Unless your name was Terry Funk, because he's about the only one that would be doing it, God rest his soul.
They're just different type of human being back then, I guess.
But I mean, here's the thing about Steve Borden. Of course, yes, I'm a Sting groupie, whatever you want to call me. I've been a fan of Steve Borden since him and Flair went 45 minutes on the very first Clash of Champions on my late grandfather's birthday. Rest in peace, Papa. I love you. When he was the blonde Severe Sting and Flair worked with him and basically made him the franchise, as Dusty Rhodes called him for so many years. And of course, Sting does one of the best Dusty Rhodes impersonations you would ever want to hear. He's so good at that. But, I mean, he's getting the run in a sense that he should have got when he finally went to the WWE, but did not. But yet he's getting that here in AEW. And then for him to still be jumping off of ladders, jumping off of the railing from the crowd, jumping off the Jumbotron onto talent. But I mean, he's just...
And he's so stiff. He's so stiff when he does it. There's no, you look, Sting, I love you. I really do. I do look at you as the icon. You're one of those guys. I really do love you. But by no means do you look, as they would say, fluid
No,
when it comes to doing this
No.
shit.
no. Because for a perfect example, when they had the tag team match when it was Sting and Darby against Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho, and he puts Sammy through the table, kind of half-ish, but
Talking about half-ish, I'm not gonna lie. What they did to Swerve, that hurt my back. When did the coffin drop while Swerve was like halfway out of the coffin? And I was like, oh shit. And then he went back in, and when they closed the coffin, Swerve's hair is still on the outside of the coffin.
Dreads. Not the dreads.
So here's what I was thinking. During the match, at one point, the coffin was about to get dropped, and the only thing that prevented it from happening was his hand.
Correct.
And I think it was either Sting or Darby, or it may have even been Swerve. It was like just his hand. Now, when they closed it on his hair, the coffin didn't close all the way. So I was thinking, well, the match is still on. His hair is still like his hair has stopped the.
Yeah.
But no, they rang the bell and everything, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. He just stopped it with his hand not too long ago. You telling me Swerve couldn't have stopped it with his hair? And then I thought, damn, Swerve must be in that coffin going, oh, fuck, that must have hurt like a motherfucker.
I'm sure some dreads might have came out of his scalp. I'm sure he has some more wounds to tell about that. So back to the CM Punk situation. So it's just not. It's almost like, what now? I mean, do you think he even dare tries to kiss and make up with Hunter? Because I mean, as we always say in this business, never say never. But do you think he has burned too many bridges to even attempt to want to go back to Connecticut? And even if he is brought back, how will he be accepted in locker room? Because Matt Hardy seems to be pleased that he's gone. Of course, Seth Rollins has not been at a loss for words about how he feels about Mr. Brooks.
Seth Rollins does not give a shit about CM Punk. We know that.
For lack of a better term. But I mean, but how would that go? That
wouldn't go well. Here's what would happen. If CM Punk somehow weaseled his way into the WWE, coming back, I don't think that would be a decision that was made by Triple H. I think it would be a decision that would be made by Vince McMahon or somebody else who's in the board, because they know there's two things that can happen with this. They can leave it alone and let the locker room be happy and keep putting on a good product, or they can sign him. You could reap the rewards of the ratings and, the implications of him showing up, would be you can do that. But what would happen is it would literally fracture your locker room to the point some of your best wrestlers on your roster are going to end up on the other team. And then they're going to be reaping the rewards long term, while you are now stuck with somebody who has now proven he is so egotistical he thinks he is untouchable.
That's a very good point.
You already have members in your locker room currently that have either said that they don't want him to come back because they've been there, or they were there at that point. Some of them are fairly new, coming from NXT, before CM Punk or after CM Punk and everything else like that. But there's still that feeling, and everybody in that locker room knows how that situation went down. Because I don't think all of the information that's ever come out about what happened during that time where CM Punk basically just said, I'm done with fucking wrestling now. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. What we have is what they've put out. But behind the scenes, everybody knows the truth about what actually happened. And there's already disdain. There's already even a lot of I told you so's going around after this whole thing happened. So if you bring him in for less than a year just to fucking top it off at WrestleMania, to give him his dream of main eventing a WrestleMania, and then watch him fucking take off again, why would you risk a locker room that seems to, by all intents and purposes, they give a shit about each other?
Well, yeah, the locker room now, since Triple H has taken full reign, the locker room now is in a very good place. It really is. I mean, of course, there's going to be disagreements on who goes over, this and then the third, but it definitely seems like it has been a safe workplace, and that's credit to Triple H, and that's credit to Shawn Michaels. I mean, that's his right hand man. Who would have ever thought that Shawn Michael Higginbottom would become an important agent backstage? Because if we, the stories about what he used to be to what he is now. I mean, God still does work miracles. I mean, Shawn Michaels is one of them. But again, and I don't want to say that he's a cancer, because that's a strong take. But now I don't know who the leader of the locker room per se is in the WWE, because I know back in our days, the unequivocally undisputed leader of the locker room was Mark Calloway, the Undertaker, and
yes, sir.
and he made sure that you had your head on straight and you would do the right thing for business, as Triple H was like, what's best for business. So
I think it's actually, and this is in my opinion how I see it, for both respective locker rooms, for the SmackDown and the Raw locker rooms, and even the NXT locker rooms. You can kind of, for me, SmackDown, obviously Roman, leading the whole way. On Raw, you got, Sammy, Kevin, Seth, Miz. You've got all of them there to be able to kind of keep things under control, because that's a good mixture of veterans and stuff right there. NXT has people kind of coming back. Rhea did a little, stint in there that just this last time to kind of go in there and give some more, tips and all that other kind of stuff on how things go. And it started to make me think, because I remember back, watching the Scott Hall, hey yo, his interviews, and Kevin Nash, and even Triple H, and how it was in the business back in the days. If you ended up making friends while making money, you were lucky. It's very rare that you actually come out, because people would backstab each other, and you needed to watch out for yourself. Now,
I mean, back then it really was about making money.
Right. It's like if you weren't, and Scott Hall said it, like if you weren't making friends and you weren't making money, or if you were making friends and you weren't making money.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, one, the business has obviously gotten, especially financially, way bigger than what it was back then.
Yeah.
But now those same guys who said that in the in those interviews and dealt with it back then, paying their dues, doing all that other kind of stuff, have seemed to try and reverse that stigma with this crop of talent. Instead of it being everybody for themselves, it's everyone needs to now have a group effort and understand that we all need each other for this show to fucking go well. We don't need to agree on certain things all the time and stuff like that, but we need to work together. We need to make sure that we're all good. We need to make sure that we're protected. We need to make sure that everybody does the right thing. And that kind of seems to be the case. When I look at the locker rooms in the WWE right now, it's kind of clear to me who the leaders are, but there's that sense of we're going to change the kind of culture of what it used to be and turn it into something positive to where now everything's going to be good because everybody's okay with everybody.
It seems like from the outset there is no toxology. It's not toxic. There's nothing toxic about there's nothing toxic about the locker room. I don't know if you can say that in AEW. It possibly is getting to that point of it being toxic. And now with CM Punk out of the picture, maybe the locker room can get back to being a cohesion locker room unit. Because like I said, the Young Bucks, Adam Page, Hangman, they are executive producers.
But you also got to remember they still have guys like FTR on their locker room who are still putting up, even after the firing and everything like that. There's clicks. There's too many clicks.
Yeah.
When it comes to AEW, it's not a collective because you got to think about it this way, and I think this is the reason why it's that way. Because in a lot of people's minds, regardless of what you may think, there's still kind of the stigma that AEW is still somewhat the indies. It's a more glorified version of it, but it's still the main show that you want to be on is obviously, the WWE, and for good reason. With the locker room, the money, the minds that you get to learn from about the business and stuff, the most successful minds in the business,
and of course endorsements, deals, possible movies, all that, absolutely.
So everybody in AEW, it's basically a collection of guys who still, even working with AEW, still work at other shows. Still do they're still kind of doing everything for themselves. Because in the indies, that's kind of how it is. That's the culture. You're in it for yourselves because once you get to the WWE, then you can start making friends and being like, cool, all right, I made it. Now we can, obviously you still got to work your ass off. You're not going to sit there and go like, oh, I'm going to slack because I made it and everything's going to be fine now. You still got to bust your ass. Otherwise, yes, people will get on you.
Yeah.
And that's what the leaders and stuff like that, are meant to do. When you fuck up, they put you back in line.
Mm-hmm.
So here in AEW, it's kind of everybody's is still a free for all. And then where I think the Young Bucks and Adam Page and not so much as Kenny Omega. I think Kenny Omega has been a little bit better in kind of trying to stay away out of the politics. You don't really see him
trying to stay out the line,
burying people and all that other kind of stuff, like using his executive powers to his advantage.
Well, no, because the last couple of pay-per-views he's put him over.
Right. So it's you can't criticize Kenny Omega of that. Plus, Kenny Omega is doing a really good job on handling and helping out with the women's division there in AEW. So he got his hands full with that as well. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I think they've kind of got too much on their plate right now of not just performing in the ring, but having to be teachers, having to make sure that the whole show actually goes well, being in Gorilla, making sure that sometimes you have to be able to, delegate certain things to be able to be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I understand the egos that I can do it on my own. I can do it all. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay to admit when you need a little bit of help. At times. So it's just for them. I think they put themselves in a point where they're exhausting themselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to my point of what I said earlier. Even Vince had his Pat Patterson, had his Gerald Briscoe, had his Bruce Pritchard. Okay, have he like right now? In addition to having Shawn Michaels, Triple H has Kevin Dunn. He has Paul Heyman, and I think somewhere down the road, Tony Khan needs to find his Pat Patterson. He needs to find his Bruce Pritchard. He needs to find his Kevin Dunn. Maybe Jerry Lynn can be that. Maybe Arn Anderson can be that. Maybe once Sting is done being a part-time performer, maybe he can be that.
I think RVD.
He possibly could. I mean,
I think RVD instead of like an advisor to Tony type of role, he's more of like the coach of the locker room type.
Yeah.
That's where I see his role kind of turning into after a while. That's where Paul White is right now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of helping out in the background. Yeah, he does the pre-shows and all that kind of stuff. But he gives his little intakes here and there. You got Mark Henry in the background. You got all these minds that are there. It's just a matter of like utilizing them and being able to understand that.
Well, not just that is just if you're Tony Khan, stop holding on too tight, loosen up your grip a little bit. Not everybody is out to try and take the whole pie. They just want to help. They just want to help you elevate and enhance the brand and to put out a good product. Because I'm gonna tell you, for a while, when AEW first came out, I was more in tune with watching AEW because Vince was turning me off before all the allegations and whatnot before Triple H. I mean, yeah, I would still watch, but I mean, it wasn't must see like it was when we were younger.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And then AEW comes in, something new, something fresh, telling good stories, having all these guys come in, and like, it's pretty interesting. I mean, what they did at their place where I forgot the name of the place in Jacksonville where the stadium is. I forgot the freaking name of it, but I mean that being their place of headquarters before WWE did the whole Thunderdome thing. That was pretty creative what Tony Khan did. It's just for me, I think Tony is just trying to hold on too tight because he feels like he has to have his hands in everything when he doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, yes, know what's going on. I mean, make sure you're properly informed, but it's like let these guys.
He talks too much.
Yes, he does. Like some
he
things,
he puts himself out there a little too much.
Well, not only that, he looks like he's a dog. When he speaks and his facial expressions, you think, how many lines did you snort before you go on camera? Because he instantly looks like he's a freaking cokehead. Exactly. Like he looks like he is very, very paranoid as can be. Because even when he was given that spill about, I had to make the decision to terminate CM Punk's contract, it's like, dude, are you high? And if you are, where did you get that from? Because you just look like you have lost your doggone mind.
He just looks like he's shocked all the time.
Yeah.
Just he's just like maybe he's putting on like that protective, how like in studios where they give the makeup and everything. Maybe he's got a good makeup person to hide the sweat that's probably he's probably just drenched under here, but they only got him from the neck up.
Yeah. It's like Tony, come down, and the Detroit Lions are going to pull off the upset in Week 1. Oh wow!
I was about to say, is that what they just did? I can see it behind you.
Yeah, they hang on to beat the Chiefs by 1 point, 21-20 in the opening game of the season. But then again, Travis Kelce did not play, and that's a big, huge factor for the Chiefs. But anyhow, but yeah, it's just I mean,
I think
I
he does
applaud.
give off the feeling that he tries to please everybody.
Yes, and you
He's
cannot
not very good at
and you
telling
cannot do
people
that.
no.
You cannot do that in this business. You cannot, especially when it's your company
Walk all over you.
and you are the man in charge. Okay, I I mean that is one thing, and I mean people have their thoughts they could say about Vincent Kennedy McMahon Jr., but at the end of the day, he'll let you know it's still my company. Now we can talk, we can agree to disagree, but at the end, it's still my say. Now, in Tony's case, yes, everybody is not going to be your friend in this business. It's just not. It's a cutthroat business. It's a cutthroat business. Like I said, they will throw you as quick as you get done shaking their hand. That's just how it is. But
Good to meet you. Yes, yeah, it's great, great. Okay, get him the fuck out of here.
yeah,
What are we? What
that
what's this?
exactly like that. And I think in Tony's case, there's just some decisions that you're gonna have to make, and there's just some point to where you're just like, you know what, you're not cutting it. I can't put you on TV. I can't put you on Dynamite. I can't put you on Collision. I can't put you on Rampage because at the end of the day, as
It's all about putting asses in seats.
as Vince would say, is it going to draw me money? Then let's do it. Because that's what it's all about. It's about what you got at the gate. It's about what you got at merchandising sales, and it's about can you draw me money? That's what it's all about. Now, before we close off this inaugural episode of the Ring Psychology 2.0,
Sure.
John Cena makes his return, and he's going to be on TV for 7 consecutive weeks. So
Who's
my
he gonna
question,
bury now?
he had a little promo with Jimmy Uso and gave him the AA. So my question is, while Roman Reigns is recuperating from this tremendous run that he's been on, is this a program between Cena and Jimmy Uso? Cena has hinted that this is probably more than likely one of his last runs because he said my time is coming up soon. Is this Cena's last run? If it is, what do you do with him? And I'm going to take a shot at John Cena. John, I respect you for what you've done, but it is time to let the hair go because the bald spot is quite obvious. Damn it, if I can let it go, if I can get rid of mine.
Can you imagine John Cena bald?
No, I can't, but it's a lot better than you turn around and that noticeable clear spot in your head is there. But anyhow, what do you think they're going to do with Cena now? Now remember, he's going to be on TV for 7 consecutive weeks. And actually, SmackDown is heading to Sacramento, I think this month, actually. I think this month, the 29th, SmackDown will be at the Golden One Center, the home of the Sacramento Kings. So my question for you, sir, is how do you see this ending for one of the biggest moneymakers in history in John Cena? How do you see this ending?
I mean, given what they call him, they openly call him the greatest of all time. On camera when he's out there and everything, they openly do that. So it wouldn't make any sense to me for John Cena's last match. It wouldn't make any sense for it not to be at a WrestleMania.
Okay.
So if this is going to be his last run, and think about it, we're getting to be mid-September.
Correct.
October, November, December, January, February, March, April. We got 7 months.
Correct.
7 months until the next WrestleMania. I don't know what John Cena's film schedule or anything else like that looks like. If he's going to be on SmackDown for 7 consecutive weeks, that's still not 7 months. And you look at him more ending it around, Royal Rumble season, type of, which I think, again, if we're talking about it being the last run, riding off into the sunset.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's the last run or not, but I mean, he has hinted that his time is definitely indeed winding up in WWE. So I'm just putting.
Well, I mean, he can only do so much right now. I mean, even when he was here, he wasn't the 5 moves of doom guy. You're taking an ass whooping, and at the end of the day, the comeback, the fucking shoulder block, it was all that. That's why people started after a certain amount of time just started booing him, because it was kind of like that how Hogan was back in the day. It was getting stale.
Correct.
So everyone was hoping for that heel turn, but it just never happened. Like the whole heel thing never happened. So
which made the cinematic match so good, because you kind of saw what he could have been if he did the heel turn. I mean, him and the whole NWO stint during that cinematic match with Bray Wyatt was great, and you kind of saw the heel side of what Cena could have been if he turned heel. I know why he didn't, because he does so much for the kids, does so much for Make-A-Wish, which is one reason why Drew McIntyre is trying not to go heel, because of the stuff he does for Make-A-Wish, which I think he could use a heel turn. I think that would enhance him, but
it's kind of at this point now where with Cena, I think this. Yes, he does a lot of things for Make-A-Wish and that kind of stuff, but the movies and stuff like that he has put out, not all of them have been what we would call PG.
Correct.
So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. Yeah, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for me to, if it's going to be his last run, and we got to think about it this way, because the old adage of when you're done, you got to leave with a loss. Like, you got the pinfall loss, and you're on your way out. It happened to Ric Flair. It's happened to countless others. So to go out like that, I think if you're going to have that happen, now in no way am I saying that this is going to happen and this is the only way that it could be successful. But I think if this is going to be the last run, especially at WrestleMania and everything else like that, why not give a little heel turn? Why not go Hollywood Rock on him? And just for a bit, and then because people then at that point, the real fans would see that as John Cena's gift to them. That's what they would see. And he would probably get, instead of getting booed like Hogan did, they would carry John Cena out in celebration, going, "This is our hero." If that's what John Cena did.
Well, he would be the hero, except to one person. Miz will be like, "Fuck off, good riddance, goodbye."
So it gets to WrestleMania. I don't know who he would necessarily pick
that would be
to.
the question. Who would be the winner? Because I'm hoping.
I feel like it could only be Randy if we're looking at the roster the way it is right now, and we're talking about people who were essential pieces to John Cena's career. Edge isn't there anymore, I don't think.
And that
He may be going to AEW soon.
And that's a big question mark, in the clouds, up in the sky.
So
Because
if Edge was still there, I would say Edge and Cena at WrestleMania to close out Cena's career. That would be cool. But since that may not be the case, the only one that I look at the roster that makes any sense at all is Randy Orton. And right now, Randy Orton, before he got hurt, was kind of in a face phase right there with Riddle.
With Riddle, yeah.
So, and people still, love Randy Orton and everything else like that. So you can maybe have a...
It doesn't matter if he's heel or face. They love Randy. It doesn't matter.
So you could maybe do some sort of... Like, I see it going this way, and picture this, and probably somebody's going to steal this from me, but you know what? If it happens, I'm going to know they did. Like, Cena's doing, the final 7 weeks and stuff like that on SmackDown. He's saying that, he's going to get ready to retire, pretty soon, come Royal Rumble or something like that. Like, Royal Rumble will be my last pay-per-view. So it gets to the SmackDown. Randy Orton finally makes his return. Gets traded to SmackDown. Okay. So now he's on SmackDown, and now they're at the final stages of this whole run with John Cena. It's been magical. Everybody's hoorah, hoopla. And then it comes down to they're probably going to have some sort of send-off celebration for John Cena, for the greatest of all time. And then who comes down to, give John Cena a hug and celebration, and then somebody who John Cena respects in Randy Orton. Randy Orton comes down, big pop, everybody loves it. Randy Orton gives him a hug, and then John Cena does the unthinkable chair shot to the back, hits him with an A on it, getting brutal with it, takes off one of the steel chair thing, does like Edge does, STF through the mouth and everything. Just getting vicious with it, putting him through a table, and then making this big promo like Randy, the amount of time I should have been past Ric Flair and everything like that had it not been for you, and so, like some sort of promo that reverts back to their rivalry to each other, and him just blow off and say, that I would have been somewhere a whole hell of a lot sooner had it not been for you, Randy, and these injuries that set me back all this time. The pent-up, ruthless aggression type of thing. Just coming out and pouring out of John Cena. Turns into this big old feud. WrestleMania 40 comes around. During the match at some point, the heel-face match, it becomes blurred. Now everyone's looking at it and realizing, yes, this is John Cena's last match. The way it's going, the storytelling in the ring, there's kind of a semi-face turn in the middle in the ring with John Cena kind of acknowledging the crowd during the fight.
Almost like WrestleMania 18, yeah. I can see.
Yeah, and then maybe not so much as I'm sorry, I love you, but Randy Orton at the end. After some sort of stare down, and John Cena's looking at him like, come on, after a 45-minute fucking classic that they put on, Randy Orton hits him with an RKO, 1, 2, 3, says something to him, and then John Cena gets to have his moment with the WWE Universe at the end of WrestleMania 40. That's how I would absolutely love to see it play out. Will it happen? Probably not. But
that's interesting.
That would be something I think would be, because again, it would be something that John Cena would be, I feel, giving back to the fans. Because again, for a long period of time, I do remember seeing the message boards going, man, if John Cena if he just turned heel, then the 5 moves of doom thing wouldn't be as bad, because then he can rub it in our faces that he does that. Right. Like it just like it would be something that he can be like, okay, this is my little gift, a little short run. Again, it doesn't have to be like a year long, 2 years long of being a heel, but it's a little short run as a gift back to the fans, to the WWE universe. And I promise you that send off at WrestleMania 40 would be the biggest tear jerking pop by any fan for the last 20 to 30 years. It would make people who cried during the reunion of Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth look like they have no soul. It would make it look like people would just be just in the moment of, just kind of realizing that, the time is up and it's time to ride off. And I think that would be the perfect storybook ending for John Cena going out.
Well,
Now, if he gets it, maybe he'll push it. I don't know. I'll send this out, tag him in, and be like, hey, here's an idea, John. Take it or leave it. Do what you want with it. But I feel like this is something that could be beneficial and something that I think the fans would feel would be special. Because when he did that little fake, when he did that promo, he said a little heel turn, and then he twisted his heel, on the mat and everything else like that. And everyone went, yeah, and they popped for that when he said that. So obviously there was a sense that people wanted to see kind of like that, the old up and coming John Cena, the rap battle, just destroying everybody before he became the U.S. champion. That type of John Cena again. They want to see that, one more time at least. Because he went from a heel to a face and then never changed again. So it was this was the same, different colors. We had different colors of the rainbow of John Cena. But at the end of the day, it was all the same thing. So it was again, I just think that would be a nice little send-off for John Cena, in my opinion.
All right. Any final thoughts before we put a bow on this?
I think this was a good idea to get this going because I know I can sit here and talk about sports. We do it on the All Pro Dropos and stuff like that all the time.
Correct.
But growing up, I always loved the sport of professional wrestling. And there is a very, very small handful of people that I know personally and stuff that I can actually have this type of conversation with. And then being able to kind of put it out there for everybody else. I think this is another avenue for me to be able to and Doug, thank you and appreciate it for taking up the hosting duties and joining and getting 2.0 off the ground, because I think a lot of good content, a lot of good stuff can come out of this. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well, I'm honored and privileged that you thought enough of me to want me to do this with you. I love you for it. And special thanks to Mizzle for checking in while he was at work and leaving some comments in the comment feed. So again, comment. Again, if you want to be a guest to talk about the good old sport of professional wrestling, get with me, get with Josh, and we will make it happen. We appreciate you guys for tuning in and watching. This is of the Ring Psychology 2.0. Again, we will be with you every Thursday at 7 p.m. for the bad guy, JP Josh Brunera. I'm Double A Anthony Alvarez, and we will see you in the ring.
Deuces.